Welcome back to I Own a Business. I'm joined today by a practice owner who's made annual retreats a regular part of their leadership strategy. And she's seen firsthand how powerful they can be when done right. And we're going to talk about that today. How do we do that right? So, we're going to talk about what goes into planning a great retreat, how to make the most of the day, and the impact that it's had on her practice in terms of leadership, teamwork, and even bottom line growth. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Elizabeth Roush.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, just give us a little bit of background on yourself and your practice for those who aren't familiar.
Absolutely. So my practice, which is Doctors Roche and Will, is in Northeast Indiana, and we are actually coming up on celebrating our 80th year in practice. Very briefly, started with my grandfather, moved on to my uncle and my dad, and now on to myself. So third generation, 3 locations, long time practice. We started with 1 location and then have opened 2 other locations cold in the meantime. So lots of history there, lots of fun stuff, but small towns in Northeast Indiana and have a great history.
So, the question is, as a family business, any plans for the kids to take over?
There's definitely no pressure on them to take over. If anything, they probably have pressure to find their own path and pave their own way. So as of right now, there's zero interest. They do attend different IDOC meetings or different things with us, so they're around, but have not shown interest at this point in time. And so they're encouraged to do whatever they choose to do.
Like any good parent, right?
Yes.
Is there to multiple things? Maybe they come back to. I always said that with sports is that it's funny because I have two sons, and when they were younger, we exposed them to all kinds of different things, but somehow they sort of migrate back to the sports that I played. And I don't know if I subconsciously planted that in their head or it was just, I don't know anything about soccer. So I know basketball, I know baseball, and that's what they ended up playing. But
That is very true. They take after their mom, and I'm now a dance mom instead of a dancer. So that they take after mom for sure.
well, best of luck to them on their ventures. And before we get into the logistics of an annual retreat, because I think for a lot of people listening to this, their first thought might be, that sounds like a lot of work. And I can barely get people together for my weekly staff meeting. Now you want me to do an annual retreat. What does that even mean? Before we get into the logistics of that, we'll kind of break down how you've done it and how you've been successful with that model. Maybe even some things you've changed or would do differently. But I'm curious what inspired you to start doing an annual retreat for your practice?
So we've been doing it for several years now, and I believe I may have stolen the idea or gotten the idea from a Prima roundtable years ago. I honestly couldn't tell you who or give credit to who it was because it's been so long ago. But I do feel like someone else was talking about how they had either a half a day or some kind of kickoff sort of thing for the year. And I jumped on it and rolled with it, and we have just really grown it from there. And it's a really crucial part to our practice and getting the year going.
Can you walk us through what that looks like? Because I think we're familiar with the term. For some people, they might think, well, does that mean I got to rent out a cabin somewhere out in the woods for a weekend? How much is this going to cost me? What does an annual retreat actually look like? And when you described it, I love the way when we talked before because it seemed very doable and very valuable and very practical. But logistically, can you kind of walk us through what a typical retreat, in your case, it's one day, I believe you said. What does that look like from start to finish?
Absolutely. And to begin with, yes, it is a lot of work, especially the first year. The second year, as you're kind of getting your feet on the ground about it, it is a lot of work, but I do feel like it's very valuable, and it doesn't necessarily have to be crazy expensive. For us in 3 locations, the most expensive part is being down a day. So we do bring all 3 locations, all staff. It is mandatory. Everybody comes together. We are fortunate enough that the way we schedule our locations, our biggest or our main location is automatically closed 1 day a week since COVID. That was a change we made with COVID. And so from a production side of things, we choose to have the retreat on the day that that office is already closed. So we absorb the loss of production from the two smaller satellite offices a little bit easier. So that's how we started. We started on different days because actually we've been doing it before COVID and we didn't have that closed day. So we did close all three locations, and that hurts. That part probably hurts the most because you do see that loss of production. But I do feel like the way we tailor that day and what we get out of it greatly outweighs that. We have changed and we have done everything from we used to actually be in the basement of my home because it was a big open space and it got us out of the office and we could do it there. After moving, my house didn't really have that same feel to it. Plus, we started doing some topics and some themes that it just felt like we needed to be in the office. And we have the space of this nice open optical gallery that we can use. We've got upstairs breakout rooms. So we use different rooms for breakout sessions. So we're now in the main location. We do close everything. We will take emergency eye care. I think there hasn't been an annual retreat yet where we haven't removed a foreign body out of an eye or seen a red eye. We always have somebody on call. So you have to be prepared for that. But we just let patients know ahead of time that all of our locations are going to be closed. It hasn't been an issue there. It takes quite a bit of planning. So that I think is the biggest challenge to begin with is what am I going to do at that retreat? What does a whole day of my staff together and not being in the office look like? And so I think that's the challenge to get started and the challenge from year to year. But I think we've got it down and it really ends up being a very valuable day, even with the loss of production that you have to think. And we're paying our staff to be there. So you're paying them to be there, but you're not getting paid to pay them to be there. So it is a big leap, but I think it's worth it.
Do you find the longer you do it, the more it starts to feel like it's sort of built into the yearly budget? Where it probably hurts more in the
Absolutely.
beginning because you're thinking, okay, this is an entire day. And I think a lot of owners go through the same process when they don't have regular meetings and that they think, okay, we got to close the office for an hour now. We're going to lose that revenue. But once you start to do it for a period of time, I think one, correct me if I'm wrong, but you start to see the value, the long-term value and say, okay, this really helps us be more efficient, more productive. It eliminates a lot of the challenges that we're having and it's worth it. But is it the longer you do it, you stop seeing it quite as painful
Oh,
in terms of
absolutely.
lost revenue?
And this is minor details, but when you start looking at your P&L, once you get past the first year and you're looking at year to year, there isn't a change because you've had that. Last year you were also closed. This year you're also closed. So you can absorb those patients. We're a busy practice. We're booked out for weeks. It is a big deal for us to close those doors, if you will. But there is no doubt that we have seen the value in, it depends on the topic, obviously, but some topics we are trying to tackle something really big that it's a way to all be together to try and tackle that easily and incorporate something new into the practice that is better than piecemealing it together. Other areas or topics that we've had are specific about sales or growth. So what are we going to do? How are we going to get there? And so obviously, by all getting together and having a plan, we're going to see the value pay off through the course of the year and the next year. And so I think there's no doubt that it's scary to have the cost there, but you can really make up for it if you can use a space that you already have. Then there's not a ton of cost that goes into hosting the day. We obviously feed them. We have different things that there is a little bit of cost involved, but we keep our costs to a minimum. It's just the loss of production that you have to look at compared to you're going to have your payroll for the day as well.
And obviously, you want to get the best use of the time. So, planning for an entire day, are there things that you found have been most valuable? Is it, I'm sure some of it is education, some of it may be team building exercises. Maybe you have an outside speaker, an outside rep come in. What does that look like? And is there anything you think adds the most value, or maybe anything that you'd say, I don't think we would do that again?
That's a great question. And yes, because we've done so many different things. I would assume that a lot of people's staff are the same as mine, and they sometimes get sick of hearing me be up there and speak the whole time. And if you have someone coming in, you feel like maybe they get more out of that than just you standing up there. And so we've brought in outside speakers. And honestly, we've had some that were hits and some that were misses. So unfortunately, that's one that I can't say one way or the other. I think outside speakers are good because it does break up the day, it breaks up the content, it gets them hearing from somebody else. But some of the misses that we've had the most were actually optometry specific outside speakers. One was from, I think, our lens company that we used at the time, and it just didn't sink in. One was all about sales, and our staff felt like at the end of the day, they were being encouraged to feel like a used car salesman, which obviously is not what we want, so that didn't go very well. And in those cases, the second one that we used was expensive, so that one hurt. And so we haven't brought in outside speakers as much anymore because we actually now have gotten to the point where we feel like we can customize and tailor what we want to do better internally than bringing someone in externally. I do use a lot of YouTube videos or examples. So if we're talking customer service, we always go towards Ritz-Carlton, Chick-fil-A. We've all seen those at different conferences, but our staff hasn't. So we try and incorporate some of those types of things in there to show, here's what other people are saying, here's what other people are doing. For my staff, Chick-fil-A is a better example because who hasn't been to a Chick-fil-A, and the experience of going through Chick-fil-A versus a different drive-through fast food is quite a different experience. So we have learned that it's almost better for us to kind of customize everything from start to finish. I think some of the outside speakers that have worked well is we've actually just used some local people to do things that are not necessarily directly on topic. So we brought in a safety expert and we went through and did a safety review on what would happen with a fire, what would happen if we had an intruder, what would happen if somebody brought a gun in, here's the plan, what do you do? And that was really well received and appreciated. It's things that you don't think about, and you've got that sign set up somewhere in your office, but we brought somebody in to kind of talk people through it. It broke up the day. It's now not as, monotonous about eye care or sales or customer service, if you will. And we brought in again, we're a small town. So we brought in the local mayor one time, and she just talked about female empowerment for about 30 minutes because she's a female mayor who is retired from the Marines. That went over really well. So some of those little things more just break it up. They were obviously free. We didn't pay them anything. They were more than happy to do it. A sense of community. So I feel like that kind of thing works well to, again, give them a break and have something else throughout the day. But the outside speakers from the optometry community didn't go as well for us, and it costs money. So we've shied away from that now.
So it wasn't what you're paying for, but it sounds like there was an indirect lesson that came from the speakers that didn't
Yes.
land. And it was
Yes.
interesting hearing you talk that, because we've gone through the same thing. I've been with you. You referenced Prima before, and that's where I originally came onto the company that eventually became my doc. And so I've seen a lot of speakers at events, speakers that we've hired, and some landed and some didn't. But I found something pretty consistent with the ones that probably got the best feedback is they would reach out before the event and they would want to know everything they could learn about the audience. What is your audience's wants, needs, concerns, pain points? And they would really do their investigative work to really learn about the audience that they're talking to, and they made it about them. So I learned a lot as a speaker to really understand the audience that you're talking to. Otherwise, it's not going to connect. And now a good segue into the event itself, a retreat, ideally, I think we want to create this environment where people are more vulnerable than they'd be in the typical 9 to 5, and you learn things about your staff and they learn things about you. Are there some things that you can point to, or maybe just even speak in general to it, where the staff opened up about things that were challenging to them, whether maybe that's professionally, maybe it's even personally, that you better understood them? I mean, is it fair to say that that's s- a good outcome that we'd like to have when we walk away from that event at the end of the day, is that there's more connection and cohesiveness among the team?
Oh, definitely. And I think the thing that has surprised me the most about having these retreats and hosting these retreats, because again, for me, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I actually have the retreat on a Wednesday, and then I leave on Friday to go to a vacation.
You're
So
out.
it's a lot of work. It really is. But one of the things that surprises me the most is almost every single one of my staff, they will tell you that that's their favorite day of the entire year. And that means a lot to me because I do put a lot of work into it, and that wasn't necessarily the point, honestly. The point wasn't for my staff to feel like, "Oh, well, this is the most they enjoy." But I get why that is, and they know we put a lot of work into it. It's about camaraderie, it's about learning your peers, it's about not having patients there and just us in there for the day, and it's about trying to make them feel like they're better staff members, that they're more involved, and every year has been a different theme, but we consistently try and tailor whatever we're doing to the theme. We always wanna have interaction. We always have teams. So I will assign teams ahead of time. I try and mix people up, and sometimes that initially doesn't go over well, and we know that. We always know there are gonna be people that are initially unhappy when they see their team. But by the end of the day, it worked out really well, and we get why those teams are why they are. So we're trying to put people who maybe don't work in the same department. Let's get to know each other, different locations. If we see that they are already good friends with somebody, they are not on that person's team. Let's get to know people better. We do have friendly competition throughout the day. So those teams are encouraged. They've always got a color assigned to them or a theme assigned to them. Again, depending on what we're doing, they will sit together. They will eat lunch together in their own breakout room. They will participate in all icebreakers and get up and get moving games. So I do think it's really important to get them up and get them moving throughout the day. So we have at least one or two get up and get moving, typically some sort of competition in the morning and then same in the afternoon so that it accomplishes as much as we can. Camaraderie with your team, you got to work together, get up and get moving so you're not just listening to me, and then sometimes it's interactive with our what we're talking about, and sometimes it's not. So we have done everything from Jeopardy to Family Feud because you can customize that. It's really easy. You can find it and just roll with it. They love that. They've got buzzers. They get hooting and hollering, and it's a good time. One of the years we were introducing the fact that we are in the state of Indiana, and so optometry can do lasers. Yay. We were introducing the fact that we were bringing in lasers. And so we started the morning all education about what it means to need to have an optometric laser. And so we talked about cataracts and we talked about posterior capsulotomies and we talked about glaucoma. And so it was a lot of just very mundane education, but it was really important education. And our staff felt like they were learning a lot. Well, you can sit there for a really long time. So we had a lot of activities or games to get up and do, and everything was based on lasers. So they went through a laser maze in the hallway, and everything went towards that theme. And at the end of the day, we spread out and we played laser tag. So we bought laser tag guns and the teams competed. And so I think getting up and moving is really an important thing always. And I think a theme helps you as the person who's planning and preparing to kind of customize the whole day. So I find it a whole lot easier if I have a theme and I roll with it. This year's theme was all about not I don't wanna specifically say improving morale, but it was all about how we could be more cohesive as a team. And so ahead of time, we actually had everybody do a brain assessment, and that was their homework ahead of time. And then they were put together with their team. They had to share with their team who they were, their some of their strengths, some of maybe what their weaknesses, how, and it was really based on how we could all communicate with each other better. So if I know that this person works best with getting numbers instead of emotions, then I'm going to come to that person with data. If this person needs more the touchy feely emotions, then I'm not going to bring them all of the data. And so this year's was the most vulnerable for any of the retreats for all of our staff, because part of the program, and we did get outside help with this one in the morning. Part of the program was you had to get up and present yourself to your peers. You started in the small group and then you got up. And I was shocked at some of the people that I thought would have been extremely reserved and uncomfortable with it were some of the people that loved it the most. Everybody really bought in, and just it really set a good tone for the day. It helped clear up some things that had been going on in the office, and that really was our goal. We segued into the afternoon of, okay, if we're working better together and we know how to communicate efficiently together, how can we grow the practice from a production standpoint? So me as a business owner took, okay, how do I make all my staff feel better in their jobs? And if they feel better in their jobs, then now how do I see that hit our bottom line and grow the P&L? And so that was our goal and our theme for this year. And so most of our games, most of our activities were all built around effectively communicating with each other in the way we each need or are receive how we receive it the best. And so it was really well received. I was probably the most nervous for this year's retreat than any, because it was a very personal thing for everyone. But again, it's their favorite day of the year. And so they all had a great time. They all bought in. I get more thank yous from my staff at the after that day than any Christmas party that we have thrown, any family day, anything else. I get more acknowledgement from that day than any. And so I also think that that alone shows me that it's a valuable day.
I like the you added about the vulnerability and that it was a personal day. And I understand why that would be, you'd be a little bit more nervous going into that. Here's what I've found, and I'm sure you've been a part of these events too. Maybe it's at a conference or some kind of a workshop where the speaker, the moderator asks people to do something that is a little uncomfortable. Sometimes in the morning, right? You get your coffee, you just want to listen. Don't ask me to do anything. And there's always that moment when they say, okay, stand up. And you're like, are you serious? I just had my second sip of coffee. I don't want to talk to these people I don't know. And it takes about 3 minutes to start opening up. And it was really amazing. I was just at an event a couple months ago, and that's exactly what happened. And you watched it happen so quickly. What I find is the people that are a little bit more open are probably going to be the first ones to talk. Like they want to get it off their chest. They want to talk about something. And the ones that are more reserved and introverted, they tend to follow along. But everybody at our table opened up to the point where a few people were actually in tears by the end of this event. And it was really cool. And I
We
wasn't one of them. I'm not beyond it.
we did
I'm not
have
beyond
tears.
a good cry, but it wasn't me. I just but no, but it's really powerful. So I'm glad you said what you said in terms I was a little nervous about that, but at the same time, I think it's just how we're wired up, and it's a good lesson in understanding people better and understanding that that person who shows up to work every day and doesn't say a whole lot, you don't know a lot about them. There's somebody in there who's got something to say. Same with your patients. We can get very much routine, jumping from one room to the next. This is my 1020 patient, and not really understanding them as a human as a human being and understanding them at a deeper level. But I think it's so important that we get better at that we get better at that communication side and getting people to open up and just listening to people.
Yeah, it ended up being a great day. There were definitely tears. I'm the person who's not as vulnerable. I don't want to get up into it. I sit towards the back of that room if it's first thing in the morning because I don't want to be called out. But it was a good thing that they could also see that that's how I am. We learned a lot about certain staff that, we just weren't sure. And so it was helpful. And then, exactly like you said, we really then took that or branched that out too on now think about patients. We don't have the ability to have their brain assessment in front of us, but now you have the ability to know they fit into one of those categories. And if you're the opposite of them, you may be telling them the same thing and you may be thinking, I've told them this 5 times and it's not sinking in. Well, you're telling them that in your way versus them hearing it in the way they need to hear it. So it it really branched out into a customer service aspect as well. And so I feel like it really was a good topic or theme for us this year. We've done customer service over and over and over again. I mean, you can go back to that for your annual retreat every few years because your staff is turned over. There's something new. You can always improve, customer service. If in doubt, what am I going to do for an annual retreat? You can always do customer service. I mean, I don't think there's a single practice out there, mine included, that couldn't walk through and say, okay, where could we improve in the customer service realm? So that's always the first place that you can start. But I liked this one in that that wasn't our theme. It just lent itself into that conversation very easily and was helpful in kind of resetting everyone again for the year and set us up for that.
So you come away from this event with a lot of great ideas. How do you make sure those ideas stick? Because as with anything else, right, we're feeling good, we're feeling energized, motivated when we come away from this, but how do you make sure that the things we talked about are going to stick a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now?
And that's a good question. That really it depends on what our theme was and what our topic was. So, one year we actually used our retreat to completely change our software system. And, we were going to have to be down anyways for some of that. So, that was the perfect opportunity to get into that and training and everything that goes into that. So from that retreat, we obviously were communicating on a daily basis. I mean, we're changing software. Here's what we're doing, what's going right, what's going wrong. And actually, we used the retreat to set up the software change. So we could try to think about all of the things ahead of time that would make the transition easiest. So, what are we going to do with the schedule? What is this? What does this look like? And so that was one that obviously we're following up on a daily basis because that's a big undertaking. The lasers, a little bit different. We don't really need to follow up on the education of that, but we do follow up and we're following up pretty regularly on, okay, here's how many we scheduled initially, which was like 5 in the morning. And now Friday morning, I have 15. So, you have to follow up routinely on my laser team, how many more can we handle? Where are we my front desk staff, where are we at with scheduling? I mean, our lasers are booked out until I think September or October at this point. So that communication is probably a little bit more via either email communication or those individual teams or people on a regular or frequent basis. We always do a follow-up after the retreat, whether it be emails or if there's PowerPoints or anything along those lines. This year, with the how do we talk to each other, that's not really something that we specifically followed up in. More so, it's my practice manager is meeting with one-on-one or teams again more often in just a sense of how are things going? Are we communicating well? And then taking that approach. We are back to, and we had gotten a little lax on the sales side of things and the production side of things on meeting regularly with our Edge Pro numbers and goals. And so we've gotten back into we touch base monthly, but I like quarterly numbers better. So We also have a Friday morning meeting, only about an hour and 15 minutes, the first Friday of the month, where again, we get everybody together. And so the first one after a quarter, we go through all numbers with everybody. And so we're following up specifically on those in the quarter. I meet with my technicians more often to say, hey, here's where we're at and here's how things are going. So it does depend on the theme or the topic, but yes, I think it's important to follow up. We follow up in emails, we follow up in PowerPoints, we follow up at our Friday morning meetings, and we follow up on one-on-ones for some people for some topics as well.
How often do you meet as a team? Is it, you said it's weekly? And what does that look like? Not to get too far away from the retreat, but I'm just curious for people listening to that. Okay, that's a one big, one time a year event. What does her weekly routine look like?
So our schedule looks like we're basically one, if you will. So once a day, we have daily huddle in the morning, and that's just your doctor team. So the doctor with his clinical staff meets every single morning to go through the day. What's the schedule look like? Is it correct? Is there anybody we need to bring attention to? Who looked ahead of time on Optify at their frames? What did they browse? Did they all of those details? So we go through every single day with a daily huddle. That's our one day. 1 week is probably where we have laxed the most, and we found that that wasn't necessarily an efficient use of our time, other than my practice manager typically meets once a week with team members of some kind. So that's not as consistent. Once a month is the first Friday of every single month. We hold the about hour and a half meeting in our Kendallville location. Different topics, just depends on what we're doing. This last one was everybody's favorite, which was HIPAA compliance.
Hmm.
Necessary evil, got to get it done, get everybody together, get it done. So, and then the once a year, we do the retreat. So it's kind of that power of one, once a day, once a week, once a month, once a year.
So let's close out back to the retreat. Last question. What does success look like when the retreat's over? What does success look like for that event?
I think that the success is how it has helped us to implement things that can be big undertakings in a much smoother way. You know, it's a big undertaking to change your software. It's a big undertaking to bring in lasers. It's a big undertaking to do a dry eye clinic, vision therapy. You know, all of those things can be big undertakings. And so I think taking that day and also showing your staff that, hey, it's important that you have our goals in mind and are a part of the process of bringing these things in, and not necessarily that we're bringing it in, but how we're doing it and how we're going to roll with it really makes a big difference. And I think that my staff, again, shows the appreciation of that day just in the simple fact that it's their favorite day of the year. We do try and make it that way too. I will add that we have door prizes, and I think that's a big deal. It just, again, we try and make it a fun day. So everything a vendor sends us that we've ever collected, we put it in, we make it nice. Yes, we have to go out and get a few things. Again, minimal cost, but the staff like it and they can pick from their door prize throughout the day. And I think the success is whatever we're implementing or whatever we're trying to do is just better received in the way we've set that day up and the camaraderie that comes from that day than if we were to have 3 different meetings in the same week or a weekly meeting, and we could accomplish the same goals and still bring in a dry eye clinic, or we could still bring in lasers. But I think the way we've set up the day, we've hit the ground running a whole lot better and have the right goals in mind of how many patients do we need to pay for this laser? You know, the business side of things has to be there. And so we feel like we have that set up a little bit easier by that one day and the way we have formulated it to really shower the staff, if you will, and we walk away with a much better plan than trying to piece it together.
I think that's a great point, and perhaps for somebody listening to this who's been putting off some big change in the office, feeling like it's just too heavy of a lift. I want to expand my dry eye center, add a new EHR, add lasers. That having this one a year event, I don't think you have to wait till the end of December, right? To have it. A lot of people want to do it as a planning. I understand that, but I don't think you need to sit around the next 6 months waiting for that time. But if there's something on your mind that you've been wanting to implement in the practice that feels like a heavy lift, maybe this would be the opportunity to do it. Get everyone on the same page, talk things through, and like you said, this can be more valuable from a change management standpoint than 3 short meetings. What happens when we try to push change on people? We
Yep.
get pushed back, right? So this, by the end of the day, it sounds like you've had more success getting buy-in, which is really important from a leadership standpoint. Staff can make our lives much easier or much more difficult, but getting their buy-in is incredibly important, and it's a skill. It's a skill that leaders need to develop. So, Elizabeth, this was so helpful and enjoyable and fun, and I think it's something that a lot of offices don't do, and maybe they fear. I'm not giving up a day of
Yeah.
pay and all its patients. But I hope the ones that are interested and think this would be a good fit for their office, give it some thought because it sounds like it's been incredibly beneficial to your practice.
Yeah, it is probably the most valuable day of our year. The staff enjoy it the most. I would say it's the most valuable day of our year, and we cut 2 offices of production to do it.
Which is saying a lot, which is
Yes,
so it's a commitment, but it's worth it. There's a very strong return on investment, it sounds like.
absolutely.
So thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Appreciate you sharing. Well,
Absolutely.
great to see you again. And thanks to Dr. Roush, and thanks to everyone for listening. And we will see you in the next episode.